Hey, this talk is, in one sentence, how cheap microcontrollers and open source allows problems to be solved at their location by non-experts. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but it is an empowering mouthful. Even problems which large companies have no real interest in solving can create a very big difference in people's lives, and microcontrollers allow small companies to compete locally with multinationals. If we develop flexible solutions around microcontrollers, we can change the world. We can. So why microcontrollers? Well, so a microcontroller is a computer on a chip. There's the little computer bit. Okay? They're very cheap, between $1 and $40, and they're designed for production tough environments. There are implementations which are open source, and they allow non-technical people to interact and use and work with the real world. In fact, the field is sometimes called physical computing. And an interesting characteristic of this particular field is that most people who use it, I dare say most, really have no interest in the microcontrollers. They don't care. All they want to do is they just want to get something done. And these getting things done, they are very good at solving a particular simple kind of problem, which is making a decision based on some inputs. You put them together, you look at them, and you have a response. And the inputs are usually physical, they're in the world, and the response can be either physical or it can be, little bits and electrons flowing around. And they also move a class of problems from allowing, we've got this individual creativity here, and then we've got this huge big company ability to execute, and we've got this big freaking gap in the middle. How do we get individual creativity to synthesize with this ability to execute? Well, one of the ways we do that is we look at a solution that's developed in creating and bringing the proximity together. So here's an example. So this is cheap local quality, and they are cheap. This is a little sensor. It transmits beehive humidity, which turns out is really important. I don't know why, to whether bees make it through the winter. For 12 bucks. That's a very good deal if you're a small person trying to make a living with bees. And it's very easy. And oh, by the way, easy means it can be done by a person with no special training in an acceptable amount of time. It doesn't mean no work. Okay? Now remember, our goal here is to find a solution that uses the minimum amount of technology to get the job done. Minimum. It's all about cost. It's all about economics. And the reason it's all about economics, cost, and economics. That's an ISL, I'm sure you've seen that. The reason it's all about economics, the efficient utilization of scarce resources. If we can efficiently use scarce resources, we can provide something which everyone can use. And why poverty? Why do poor people care about cheap automation? Well, the same reason everyone else cares about cheap automation. It allows you, if you're an entrepreneur, to compete very, very high quality. Take these tools from big business and bring them down into local usage and provide cultural change and leave the profits in the community. That's what open source does. It leaves profits in the community instead of taking them away, sort of some central head office in the middle of nowhere. And what we have here is cheap, efficient automation. And it doesn't really sound like much, I'm sure, but it really is a big deal if you're a small operator and you're a small organizer and you want to have change happen and compete, because you don't want to compete with the multinationals everywhere, but they're in your community competing with you, so you don't really have a choice. So what we have for the first time is open source hardware, this community where we can compete, and they're cheap, which means everyone can use them. I mean, it benefits us too, but more importantly, it also benefits poor people. And it allows us to have cultural change. Cultural change is hard. Here's an example. The electric kettle in the United States. There's really no reason why you shouldn't be using electric kettle. It's better in every possible way. And yet, people spend their efforts defending the old kettle instead of getting onto the new one. This is Sid from Toy Story. Who's seen Toy Story? This is Sid. He's the bad guy. I think he's the good guy. He's the little bad next door neighbor who does all the evil stuff to the toys. He's the good guy. I love him. He's the guy who mods all the toys. He takes, instead of just taking the toys, he changes them. He interacts with his environment. He's the guy who gets the stuff done. I think he's awesome. We need to think like Sid. So what is our task? Our task is not merely to recognize and confront the challenges of how we make this work for everyone, but to rise to our higher ideals, if you like. To succeed, we have to create a world where people have faith in their own capacity to make changes and their own capacity to do things and unlock their potential in the belief that we can create a world which everyone can share in an increasing circle of productivity and dignity. And that's it.